Recording is in progress. So yes, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gary the Expert, and I've recorded in a few weeks, so this might get back into a recording phase episode. It's not going to be too in depth, not going to be too fast, not going to be so prepared, and we're going to have an amazing episode. Before I do that, you know the drill for these intros. The podcast sponsor is quasi.com and upskillonline.org. And you can find both of them in the description. Quasi.com is a travel website, and Upskill Online is a course website where you can upskill yourself, of course. And then also check out my website, Gary the Expert Down. If you want to book a consultation with me one on one, I will happily do that. I will happily have a conversation with you. Hopefully, I can help you. And today's episode is around trauma and addiction and how they link into each other, which is a very fascinating subject. And I share a little bit about my own self. I share a little bit about my trauma and also my response to my trauma. So, first of all, what is trauma? Well, trauma is, in many ways, a response to a thing. It's not the actual thing. Traumatic would be the thing. So, we all could have traumatic experiences. Me and you, literally, I like to use this analogy with clients and say, show the difference between people. And I say, okay, me and you walk down the road. What happens? Intersection, crossway, one car drives a red light and the other car hits into another car hits into another car going on the green light. Devastating crash, wild crash, horrendous crash. And that's what words I use to describe it. And you say, oh, that was a bad crash. I've seen worse. And that could have been 10 times worse. And then I go off and I have a traumatic. I have a negative response. Your trauma is how you're dealing with that thing. So for me, dealing with that thing would be very different. I've said it's horrendous, it's treacherous, it's terrible, it's horrific. You said it's bad, and you're a rally car racer, and you've seen many cars and crashes. You're a demolition uh, derby car enthusiast, and you go to these events where cars are crashing into each other for fun, and your just mindset is completely different to my mindset. And I'm at home later at night, and I'm thinking, geez, that people, I hope they're dead, I hope they're safe, I hope they're not dead, and wow, 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 and you're like, I wonder what it felt to be in that car crash. It's a completely different mindset, completely different response, completely different outlook, completely different attitude, completely different way of operating. You're going to be you're going to take different actions altogether. See, my dad passed away when I was 16. He unalived himself, which, that was obviously a traumatic situation for me. And how I responded to that was pretty negatively. I locked myself away. I don't recall too much about the thoughts I was having. Although those thoughts I was having there and then were sowing the seeds for future profit or loss. Meaning, if I had good thoughts and I had good response, I would have acted in accordance with those good thoughts, good responses, but I didn't. I used porn as my escape. I started gambling as an escape. And I also started doing alcohol and drugs as an escape. And this is my way of responding. If I could go back in time, I would want to change that, but I can't go back in time. That's how I dealt with my dad passing away. Now, I find this very fascinating for today. Right now, you might be listening, struggling with addiction. Dr. Gabor Mate, a trauma specialist and addiction specialist, and I would highly recommend you search him up. Gabor space Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate. He is a Canadian physician or psychologist, I believe, and he spent over 50 years researching trauma and addiction. And he says one sentence that sticks with me and probably stick with me for the rest of my life and my practice going forward forever is this: addiction is always, always, always caused by trauma. Always. And he says that with such confidence, such like, he's not debating it anymore after 50 years. He has helped so many people at this stage that it's done. That's it. Addiction is caused by trauma. My porn addiction came from my dad, I believe, which is a weird sentence to say out loud. Although on a serious note, I'll still continue on the serious note. My gambling addiction came from my dad. My cocaine addiction came from my dad. My ecstasy addiction came from my dad. I don't know, other drugs over there. Uh, and then alcohol. Maybe that's an alcohol addiction, but I don't really call it an alcohol addiction. I never really saw it as an alcohol addiction, more drugs, porn and gambling. And that's the way it was. And it's true. I went to therapy, I talked to my dad, got help, got healed, and I don't I don't participate in any of those addictions anymore, which I'm very grateful to say. Very grateful to say. So for you, are you struggling with addiction? If you are, or you know someone that's struggling with addiction, what's that connected to? What's that trauma? But this opens up so many more doors, which is a sad and beautiful thing about the mind. The sad doors that it opens is that there's a lot of unanswered questions. Not in the fact that person hasn't answered the questions, which is one part of it, but the part that there will always be unanswered questions unless they seek help, unless they get help. And even when you do seek help, there will still be unanswered questions. Why did my dad pass away is a question that nobody can ever answer. I can't answer. Maybe he can answer, but he's passed away. So that question always lingers. So that question, why did my dad unalive himself, will stay there, but I have to interpret it. I have to interpret that question in a certain way. So for this person that you know that might be struggling with addiction, or you struggling with addiction, that thing that happened, or then things, or that person, or this time, or this place, or this location, or this and that, whatever that is that's causing you to feel that pain, well, it's more likely going to be related to a person, but it might be in a different place, and it might be a different time, and it might be a different age. But those things, how you responded to it, how you planted those seeds at that time, what it meant to you is trauma. What it meant to you. And we can go back and we can do some childhood trauma, but I'm not doing that right now in terms of like, people laughing at you as a kid. How did you interpret that? Or, the times that you got given something, how did you interpret that? Or the times you got slagged, how did you interpret that? Or the times you got bullied, how did you interpret that? And from there, how does that make you the person you are today? I'm not talking about that right now, although they can play a factor. I don't particularly enjoy the thought process of childhood trauma, maybe because I enjoy my childhood, because I have a good perception of it. And I don't want to look too deeply to find stuff that I don't like, which is no point to me to find those things that I don't like. But right now, here and now, the addiction that you might be facing, I believe it's down to a trauma. Dr. Gabor Mate says it's down to a trauma, a trauma. I'm going to take his advice. I'm going to understand it. And if that hits you differently and you don't like the sound of that and you're struggling with addiction, that's maybe why you're struggling with addiction, because you don't like to know that it's from something that is causing you pain. There's nothing wrong with it causing you pain. In fact, for example, if on a lesser extreme note, if I feel, so what I'm trying to say is this: I don't want to work out, but when I work out, it feels good. So for the same thing is right now, you don't feel good about the trauma, but after you will feel good. So your mind, depending on how you actually responded on it, again, this is part of those parts that I was talking about where there's so many unopened doors. You might think it's absolute fire. You might think it's absolute poison unconsciously. You might think that I'm never ever going to go back to this point, back to this trauma, back to this event, because there's no point in going back there. One example you might say, there's no point in going back there. It won't make a difference. Um, it's it's pointless. It's along the lines of it, it's useless to go back there. It's pointless to go back there. There's no point in going back there. It doesn't make sense to go back there. It didn't affect me. It's not affecting me. I am stronger than it's gone. It's in the past. I can't change the past. It's done. It's finished. There's all of these sentences we can consider as cope, but on a stronger mindset, we can also consider it as fact or truth, and your truth. We cannot tell when someone has healed from trauma. When is healing enough healing? But I find that question so interesting. And I believe the answer is when you can stand on your 2 feet, when you can open up, talk about it without getting emotional or irrational or feeling defensive or neglecting it or feeling pain against it or feeling upset against it or feeling strong, deep emotions against it. I feel you can enjoy it, look at it for what it is, talk about it openly, and just, you know, nonchalantly uh, express your opinion on it and learn from it and grow from it. That's when I believe you've healed. And maybe healed isn't the right phrase, but you're healing from it. Maybe there is no healed. Again, we don't know. We can't tell. We can't tell when there's a hole in the wall. We get a plaster in to do the hole. We can tell that the hole's fixed. But the mind, it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We can't tell, which is beautiful, blessing and a curse for you. If you're struggling with it, how are you struggling with it? Do you find that there's no point of going near it? No point in going near the trauma? I know of a friend that uses a drug that they have had certain traumas in their life, but they use the drug, and I don't know if they want to use the drug. People who do use drugs will probably be defensive and say, I do want to use drugs. And there's like people in extreme addiction, I don't think they want to use drugs. I think they'll tell you out loud they don't use addiction, but why are they falling into the same trap? Well, that's a fascinating conversation. Trauma. But someone in your life might be doing a drug and they might be escaping constantly from a trauma of the past. And they might do it every day, but they might not say they're addicted. Like a lot of people use weed, for example. It's a lesser quote unquote extreme drug. But it's, I would say, very mindless story, and it changes and alters your cognitive ability, and it makes you think differently. Very much so. And I know, as I was addicted to weed, people say you can't get addicted. Maybe I have an addictive personality, but I'm not addicted to Snickers. So I'm addicted to that. And so I was addicted to weed. Where are you in your life? Dr. Gabor Mate. Search him up. Learn about him. Research about him. If you are struggling with addiction, if you know someone struggling with addiction, maybe research that you can have and pass on some ideas. If you've got someone struggling close to you, ask them why they are struggling with this challenge, addiction. Ask them, have they got a trauma in their life? Which, unfortunately, people will be defensive to it because there's no point of going there. It's done. It's finished. It's over. It's pointless. It won't make sense. It won't matter. This and that and this and all these defensive sentences. This is why you need a professional. So go ahead, book in a session. I would look forward to talking to you. I would love to help you in some way, shape, or form. Probably save more money, have more energy, get better sleep, enjoy yourself without needing stimulants. Uh, not to think you need a stimulant to enjoy life, which is also a common thing. I need this to enjoy life, which is not true. Hope this episode has been insightful, helpful in some way, shape, or form around trauma and addiction and how them to interlink with each other. I'll just remind you of that sentence that Gabor Mate says, Dr. Gabor Mate. He says that addiction is always caused by trauma. Always. With that being said, have a beautiful, blessed day. My name is Gary the Expert. Check out the website on my website down below, garytheexpert.com. I look forward to meeting you in the future. It's a pleasure to see you at this time. Comment below and let me know how you've enjoyed this episode, or if it's been helpful, or if you've got any conflicting ideas or questions. I'd love to help you, or maybe get your viewpoint or understanding, and then maybe I can learn something from you. Have a beautiful, blessed day. On this beautiful, blessed day, I look forward to seeing you next episode. Thanks.